One thing that I just don't think is really understood is that you've got to be careful, obviously, all the time. But when something like this happens, like with my bull, Leoben, I mean, it's unrelenting. They're unrelenting. You can't look at them and go, hey, dude, you know, time out. There is no time out. If they decide to stop because they were distracted by something, they stop. If not, they just don't stop. And they just keep coming, and they just keep coming. That's the thing about this. It was just a horror. Isn't no matter, you punch the eyes, and you're cursing at him, and I'm hitting him, I'm kicking at him. They don't stop. You know, he'd knock me down, I'd be on the ground, I'd get up, he'd hit me again. And if I laid there and played dead, he would grind me into a red blood spot in this pasture, which is what they do. They drop to their knees and they just drive their head into the ground, which is what he was trying to do back here. They don't stop, and that means I can't stop. Once I fixated on those, on you know, my exit point, where I knew I'd be safe, everything I did, I had to get there, no matter what. And I kept saying to myself, get up, go, 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 get up, go, get up, go. Don't stop, don't stop, don't give up, don't stop. Keep going, keep going, keep going, all the time. And if you don't do that, you're toast. You have to. And all this BS I've heard from some of the, you know, the newbie farmers about you can outrun a bull by running a zigzag pattern across a field is just insanity. I mean, you have to be careful. You carry your big stick, you know, you just have to be careful. And this whole thing, I mean, them coming over the hill at the calves is just a fluke. And even if I had my cane, given how they came up on me, I'm sure they would have torn it out of my hands. I'm sure that I would not have been able to use it. I mean, it was just a, I don't know, it was just a fluke, But yet still, you just can't give up. And the same thing walking along that fence. I mean, I was tired. I have never, ever been in such pain before, ever. And I didn't know how badly hurt I was. I could walk. You know, one thing I noticed is that my left arm was somewhat swollen, the size of what, a grapefruit, I guess, maybe more. And I thought that had been broken when they stepped on me. And my pelvis was just absolutely on fire. Every movement just was, I was just in pain. And the same with the small of my back. But you can't stop. I mean, if you stop, you die. You know, and I don't want to die in some godforsaken pasture, that's for sure. And he sure as hell wasn't going to kill me if I had anything to say about it. So, and that's the fence line heading back up towards the hay barn. You can see this point, this high point, actually start to see the buildings. And of course I was walking on the outside of the fence, right along this fence, all the way up. Maybe walking is not the correct word. I'm kind of stumbling, kind of partially dragging my left leg.
Well, both Max and I were in the house and we heard something odd, not sure what it was, so we left the house, came out, still couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. I actually walked down in between the barn and the house and thinking it was something in the front pasture, and at that point I looked up and I saw Ron in the distance, so I came all the way around the equipment barn to where I'm standing here, and at this point I saw him walking toward me, and he was just a bloody mess, but he was walking under his own power, and he just said I've been hurt, and which was pretty obvious. At that point I of course went to meet him, and we just walked slowly, still walking under his own power. Next, I could see large amounts of blood. I wasn't quite sure what the nature of the injury was, but we just walked to the car, and at that point I really wasn't quite sure what to do, so we just drove across the street to our friend's house, Shelby and Russ Sullins. their son Mike was there, and I just called him over, and he immediately called 911, and they came within minutes in response, and from there they took care of him.
I'm bruised from my waist down with heavy bruising right across my groin area and inside of my thighs. That's where he hooked me with his head and threw me over his back. I'm bruised all along my hip, all the way back through here, back all the way around, and then across the small of my back and the top of my pelvic girdle. I have a huge bone bruise back here that is exceptionally painful. And I have bone bruises up and along my pelvic girdle through here. Then I'm bruised, of course, under my arm where he had hooked me, and my arm was bruised. I got some minor bruises on my shins and my knees where I got tossed around, but the major things are in the back and right along in this area. And the reason for that is I was standing, and they put their head down really low, almost touching the ground with their nose, and then they come up and lift. But nothing to the head, you know, which is extraordinarily fortunate. No broken bones. But the bruises are deep, and they're pretty painful. Well, this is the shirt that I was wearing that Saturday afternoon. As you can see, it's shredded. There's quite a number of holes. There's a horn hole on the right front, right here. The collar had a hole, but I thought it was maybe the buttons that gave way, but it looks like it was hooked this way and then ripped out like that. So that's where I believe that's where he had hooked me over my right shoulder and then hooked the shirt and dragged me for some distance. And then on the left side, there are numerous holes along the chest. There's one here. There's one here. There's one down here at the lower right side. And this hole right here is right under my armpit, as you can see. So he made a mess out of my shirt. It's obvious he didn't like plaid very much. The thing about it is, as you look at this, I was wearing it at the time, and it wasn't much holding on, not much holding it onto my body when I took it off. And when I took it off, and I threw it like this over his horns in his face, and held onto one of the horns as he was pushing in. I was hitting him, just pounding at his left eye as hard as I could, and just pounding. And that is the shirt story. When I met with Sue, the only thing that I could think of, and I have to tell you, I was conscious during this whole thing. She said, "What do we do?" She knew she had to get me to an emergency room somewhere, preferably Kalamazoo, and had to get me the hell out of here. What do we do? I told her three things. Call Mike, call Derek, call 911. 911, Mike, Derek. Mike Sullins and the Sullins family have embraced us, and they have been tremendous neighbors, and they know what to do. They know what to do. Derek Babcock is our chief of the fire department in Bangor. He is outstanding in trauma and medical care, medical treatment, just outstanding. So Sue got me into the Focus. We drove to Mike's. He wasn't there. I drove to his dad's next door. Mike was there, and immediately Sue pulled in. She said, "Ron's hurt." Mike speed dialed 911, came over to the car, took off his sweatshirt, jammed it under my arm, pushed my arm down. Shortly thereafter, Derek showed up, and the EMS group from Coloma, competent and skilled people. And these are all neighbors. These are all people we know. You know, that morning we had been at a pancake breakfast with these people. They know us. We know them. We trust them. And I can't tell you what great comfort that gives me, being in that ambulance with people that you know and you have tremendous faith in. And Derek was the one that made the call to call in AirCare that eventually flew me out of the parking lot at South Haven's hospital and got me into the trauma center at Kalamazoo. And again, tremendous, competent people, and skilled and competent all the way up the line. AirCare, the trauma center, all of these folks, they were just amazing. But to think that that morning we were having a pancake dinner with people, and just a few hours later I'm being trampled to death by a bull, and then I call on those very same people to help us, because we didn't know. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to live or I was going to die, and I was in incredible pain, just incredible pain. It is just beyond, you can't describe that. It's just an incredible thing, you know. So rounding the barn, 911, Derek and Mike, call now, and that was the right call.